Bana basikulu, come take a home, take me out. Ding dong, ding dong,
Today. Oh my God, what is that? Oh my God, what is that?
Girl, what's going on?
The moment I press record is when the commotion outside. Why? I was on toast this whole time, but the moment I press record, all of a sudden, I'm already sincerely angsty. Anyways. Anyways, welcome to my world, welcome to my page. I'm just gonna be dedicating myself to lifelong learning. Yeah, I think in 2024, 2025, I just took it upon myself to just try and incorporate media that is Lesotho-centered, media and literature that's Lesotho-centered, that is sort of focused or in the context of Lesotho, at least, you know what I mean? I feel like so much of what I consume is not in that context, is not Lesotho focused, and that's primarily because I feel like in Lesotho we don't really have like a big media, well, like yeah, we don't really have like a big media presence, to be honest. Social media is, but like in terms of like traditional media, we're like ish.
You know what? It's a famine of beauty. It's a famine of beauty. It's a famine of beauty, honey. My eyes are starving for beauty.
Like it's a promise to that what's that movie? That Kingfisher movie for like 12 years now. It's still in the works.
Oh my God, it's not funny.
Mazulu have their Shaka Zulu movie. They have Shaka Ilembe. Rona Arena Nix. Wagwan. But anyways, yeah. So I just took it upon myself to just at least scour and forage what I can to be able to consume more of that, because obviously they're not going to give it to us, okay? And the first thing that I picked up, one of the first things actually, I've always had this book actually. I got it in 2017, but at the time I was just I don't think I had the mental fortitude to be able to understand what it is that I was reading, or to be able to fully take in the things in this book, because also I feel like it's very dense, and also the person that wrote this used very questionable language, and for me at the time I feel like this is just too much. I remember reading like half of it or something, and I was just like, I put it down. I was like, put it down, take it down. This is too much for me. And I'm also going to get into why that is in other parts of this review. So this is going to be the first part of this review. There's a lot to say about this. There's a lot in here. There's a lot to say that I feel like a lot of people actually don't know. But the content, however, like I will say it's pretty good. I'll give it. He ate that one little thing. I'll give him that. He ate that one little thing.
You're not that bitch or nothing, but you still ate that little one. That little one thing. You ate that one thing. Oh, you.
But yeah, this is called The Basutus by Eugene Cassidy's. Eugene Cassidy's or Cassidy's. Potato, okay? But yeah, she's hella thick though, like very, very thick. I marked her up so much, like I had a lot to remember about this. Like I feel like this is the kind of book that when you're reading, there's always something to come across, or something that you might have missed. So I've read this 2 other times, and and still I was still finding things that I didn't find before. So yeah, that just gives you context of how much information is in here. So I just, because we're gonna be celebrating Moshoeshoe Day, Moshoeshoe's month in March, and also my birthday. I mean, like, a month in Kulu. But because we're gonna be celebrating Moshoeshoe's month, Moshoeshoe's Day, I just felt it fitting to be able to like do a piece or focus on the things that were about Moshoeshoe in the book. What stood out to me, what things I noticed, what stayed with me throughout the book, and things that I feel like are not really talked about within the book. I feel like there's a lot to celebrate about him outside of what we already know. I feel like what we know is very like condensed and summarized, especially when we're talking like in an academic sense. It's always very like fast, quick, give you the facts, but there's not a lot of breaking down of what actually stuff means, you know what I mean? So yeah, so I wrote a Substack piece. Like, I'm so proud of myself. I don't know, I feel like I've had this like creative push this year. I just throw chakras up, you know, they're up. Like, I just have a lot to say this year. I feel like also my creativity is just being like, whew, it's just sprouting and flourishing. I'm like, okay, I better use it up while I still can, you know? Yeah, so I wrote a piece. And I'm gonna be discussing it in video format and also talking about the things that I discovered in the book itself. You get. So we started by saying the title is "There's a Black King Right There."
That's a black king right there.
There's a Black King right there, which is a Gen Z or 2K perspective on the legacy of King Moshoeshoe. So my biggest thing with the book is I feel like there's a lot that we talk about, even just not with the book, but just in terms of history. There's a lot we talk about Moshoeshoe. He was a great man. He was a diplomatic man. He was very peaceful. But I wanted to get into the is it the crux of the crew? The crux of why that is. I think that you said the crux of the crew. Or like the depth, or like what made him so great, what influenced him, who were his influences, what were his philosophies, what pushed him to do the things that he did, the way that he did them. And I feel like the book did a great job in like humanizing him. I feel like a lot of times when it comes to like these warriors or like the late grades, it's very easy to like have this perspective of them like they are superheroes. But usually they're just people like us, but they just have the courage to be able to step out and do the right thing, basically. And I feel like that's what he did. And the book does a very good job, I feel like, in humanizing him and understanding his psyche, like the way he thought. I actually think he's a philosopher. In my perspective, I feel like philosophers are always like termed to be like from Western areas or Western influence, like Marcus Aurelius, those kind of people, Plato and all of them. But really and truly, like, Moshoeshoe was a philosopher. Like, if you read the book, like the way he's able to synthesize information and just, oh my goodness, guys, I highly recommend the book. I really do, just so you can get an insight into what kind of man that he was. So yeah, that was my basis of why I wanted to like get into the book and just understand more of what I didn't know, or like add on to the things that I already did know. Yeah. And one thing in particular that I feel like really stood out to me was that he really was a good man, Savannah. Like,
he's a good man, Savannah. A good man.
That goes without saying. Like, you can't even argue with that. That's one thing that, like, the legacy that he left behind was that he was a very diplomatic person, very giving, always putting his people first. Like, it was never about like this egotistical fight or scourging or like trying to exploit people, like, or I mean, yeah, I'm the big boss. He always just put other people first, their needs first. Like, it's just yo. I feel like a big part of why that is also his father. I feel like we don't really talk about much of his father, but the book highlights that even Mokgashane himself was that way. He actually instilled in his sons while they were still like coming up in age, that they had to, like, in the winter time, they had to set up a fire and stay by the fire in case there would be travelers coming in. So for their convenience, for the convenience of travelers, they had to stay and put up a fire for travelers, like people they don't even know, strangers, not even part of their nation. Like, that's so admirable. Hello. And the book goes on to say, so this is quoting Mokgashane, what he said. So he said, "It is by listening to the discourse of these men that you will become acquainted with the customs of foreign nations." Which I feel like it also explains his Moshoeshoe's intrinsic nature for always wanting to know more, his curiosity and his philosophical nature. Like, he was just a very curious person. He was always trying to find out more from other people that had different cultures than him. And it was never about, even with the other cultures that assimilated into his nation, he never tried to like impose his own beliefs or his own culture on those people. He would be like, oh, you can come, you can do your own things. For those of you that don't know, even in the Wasotho nation, we have Matebele, we have Xhosa people as well, and they still practice their own things. Like, they have their own way of doing things. I remember my mom actually worked in the Highlands, yeah, that's how you say it. In the Highlands, was it last year? And she was telling me that she came across like Xhosa speaking people, and they still have their own traditions, their way of speaking. God, it's still, they're still Xhosa people basically. Even the Ndebele as well, some who speak their own language as well. But I honestly haven't had. I think one of my aunts actually, she's in Ndebele. Yeah, my aunt's to marriage, if I'm not mistaken. Is she Xhosa or Ndebele? Somewhere there. Girl. So I feel like that just gives you an insight into just the kind of good person that he was. It was always about, I'm going to take you in, I'm going to learn more about how you think, why you think the way you do, like what influences you, things of that nature, which is so like admirable. Like, hello. All right. Yeah, and even with the person that wrote this book, Eugene, one of the main reasons that, outside of like Moshoeshoe wanting access to guns and like just protection, he was really curious about, who are these missionaries, who are these people, what can they offer me, like where do they come from, you know, what is the knowledge that they know that I don't know, which again relates back to Mokgashane and the way that he thought. Yeah, and even with his subordinate chiefs, like it was the same way. The book also says that one time during like a speech, the subordinate chiefs was recalled saying, "After all, we are but your servants. Men are born and die in the same manner, be they high or low. If there are some who are entitled to obedience, they derive this right from their fellows, who will thus for the welfare of all." And this also spilled onto other people as well, like even like the subjects or like the entire nation. Eugene just recalled them being so nice and kind to each other. They would share literally everything, food, labor, everything was shared, which I feel like speaks to the influence of their king or our king. And I just feel like that's so great. He really was a good man, Savannah. You can't dispute that. And even in the governance of his people, he's recalled, or he's said to have been very inclusive. It is quoted that in all affairs, legislative, judicial, or executive, he acted by the advice and with the consent of his council. On occasions of great import, a pizzo or national assembly was called, since in all matters he could not act without first learning the people's will. And obviously, like, with the people that he was interacting with at the time, like Europeans, the Boers, what, they could not understand, like, what do you mean you're consulting people? Because obviously you know how you know how those people act.
Don't laugh. You can't laugh.
You know where they come from. So it was a weird thing to them, and they could not believe it when he told them, like, no, I have to go consult with my people. I have to understand what their thought and their beliefs on this issue or this thing that I'm bringing forth to them is. And he just didn't rule like an iron fist that the Europeans were like were accustomed to, you know what I mean? And it also denoted in the book that the nature of Moshoeshoe's rule was never understood by the Europeans who quarreled with him. They took him to be a despot, wielding solitary and unlimited power to his people. If they demanded instant decisions in some grave dispute and Moshoeshoe asked for time to consult his people, they thought it a mere subterfuge to gain time, and they called him ugly names. When it sometimes happened, a peremptory ultimatum was sent that Moshoeshoe should pay 6,000 or 10,000 head of cattle and 1,000 or 2 horses within a few days. It seems to have been thought that the chief could waft them in with a word. It appears to have been imagined also that Moshoeshoe had the power and the right to give away large areas of land. And this is also not true. I actually even read what was in Jan or Feb. Was it this month? I don't know. I read it the second time actually. There's this book called Nalani Lemulewa Batau, which is like a history of the Batau people, who they are, where they come from. And in that book it is denoted, I tried to translate it, but like I don't know if I did it justice. It is denoted that land is the ancestors' cow, which means that it could not be given away, which shows how much of a precious commodity it was and could not be shared, or it was meant to be shared but could not be privately owned and hoarded. So even Lickback, outside of just Moshoeshoe's nation, Lickback also had the same thing. Like for African people, it was just a norm that land is not something that you privately own. You can share it with other people, but it's not to be privately owned or like hoarded, or like it's under the control of just one person, you know. It belonged to everyone. It was the ancestors' cow. Like it belongs to everyone. And obviously to the people, the European people that he was deliberating with, they just couldn't understand that. Because they came from like a system of capitalism and things of that nature. So yeah, another thing that also stood out to me is that that also Eugene also pointed out is that Moshoeshoe had a real love for children, like so much so that he would be seen feeding his own children sometimes in the presence of like delegates and warriors. Like he just didn't care. Like he would be seen feeding his kids on his lap, just like, which is a role that was normally relegated to women at that time. And even in the book, Eugene highlights just how there were very strict gender roles during that time. So like people that strayed from that were given like kind of like a side eye, but he just didn't care. Like, I'm gonna feed my kids, bro. Which I feel like is it just highlights how secure he was like in his manhood, in his masculinity, and just I feel like it relates, it just highlights his healthy masculinity. Like it was never about like showing, oh, I'm the man. And I feel like that was something that King Moana Mhlumi instilled in him. It was in the book. You will also see that during his younger times, he was said to be very like, what's the word I could use? Very temperamental. But I feel like with the help of Moana Mhlumi's wisdom, he was able to like hone it in and be very secure in his manhood and not have to like have this outward show of like, yeah, I'm the man, you know. So he was just able to like, I'm just gonna feed my kids. Which is just, yeah, it's very admirable, especially when you think about the context of those times. Like, yo, that's quite a big deal, you know. And also something that I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about is that I feel like he really was an abolitionist. I think I came across like abolition and what it means during that 2020 period when it was like the Black Lives Matter movement, and just people talking on social media about like alternative ways to like punitive or punishing ways to punish crime or to deal with crime, things of that nature. And I really feel like after reading the book, I really feel like Moshoeshoe was an abolitionist, really and truly, and you understand why. So I'm gonna give you a little bit of context. So even in like the judicial system, or like the way that they carried out dealing with crime and such and such and such, it was very inclusive. So number one, he would include other people, like other people in the nation will be present, and then the perpetrator, let's say, and then also like the victim of the crime would be present, and they would relay their case to the whole nation at large. It wouldn't necessarily be the whole nation, but the people that wanted to be present, and then also people that could relay their own side of the story, relay their information if they had additional things to say. Like, it was just very inclusive. And even at times the victim would say what they felt like was an appropriate way for them to get justice. Like, what is an appropriate, what do you want out of this proceeding? That was given to the victim. Like, they could say, I want this to happen, this and this and this to happen, for what happened to me. And I feel like that's very admirable. And it said that the most repercussions involved very hefty fines, and the most extreme was that you would be socially exiled. So you just be, the nation would say bye bye. And there's one instance where Moshoeshoe strayed from this process that he did. Like, I think there was someone that went against him, or like a rebel or something of that nature, and he put a rebel to death by means of execution and relayed to Eugene how much he had regretted it. He explained, I once had 2 rebels thrown over there and have often repented of it. More than once, when trouble has come upon me, I have attributed the cause of it to this severity. Which I feel like, again, it shows his propensity to allow himself to be a teachable man and a teachable leader. And also his introspective nature, his willingness to surrender himself to just being told, I'm gonna offer seats, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you're gonna get it wrong, you're not always gonna be right. And he was able to open himself up to that. Even as great as he was, even as a prominent leader that he was still able to say, you know what, hi, you're floppy. And I also feel like a big part of that was Moshoeshoe's influence on him. So like I said, during his younger times, especially like after initiation, he was known to be very temperamental, very hot-headed, you know. So after initiation, it is said that Moshoeshoe was overly ambitious and had times been overcome by a violent temper, which had resulted in the death of other young men who did not show him proper respect. So during this time, another thing that also stood out to me is that Mokgashane, his father, went to seek out the counsel of Moshoeshoe, because he was just like, I feel like this temperamental behavior is going to lead to his destruction. So it was like, I'm going to consult with Moshoeshoe for him to at least give me counsel, give me wisdom of what to do. So he sought out Mwana Mhlomi to be able to like mentor him and help him and guide him through this very volatile period he was in. Mwana Mhlomi is then like a very famous prophet who gave him wise counsel, advised him, was his mentor, things of that nature. And it is said Mhlomi urged him to deal justly with especially the poor, to be generous with his subjects as well as his enemies. Very important thing to note there. To love peace and the profits of hard work rather than war, to share his wealth through the system of Mafisa, to marry many wives so as to spread his influences and never kill anyone accused of witchcraft. And I believe this regeneration and renewal of his personhood and himself, he was able to extend that same grace and that same olive branch to other people that perhaps, you know. One instance I can reference back to is during the pilgrimage to Tawabisi, his uncle was captured by cannibals and he died at their hands basically. But instead of Moshoeshoe taking a punitive route or revenge on those people, he actually gave them clemency. So he took them in. He was like, you know what, I'm gonna give you fields. He gave them fields, he gave them animals, he gave them security, and as a result cannibalism was gradually eradicated. Like, simple as that. Just showing people grace. Isn't that something? Wowzers. And to me, this is the closest thing to abolition I can think about. I feel like a lot of times with these systems, I feel like people in the West, they come up, which I understand, like people that aren't changed in the West, they come up with the solutions. But a lot of the time, I feel like the system, the things that they come up with are very abstract. Like, it's very utopian. Like, well, you know, like, I so wish it could be like this. But then they don't give like a very tangible experiences or like examples of, well, then what's the solution? How do you do that in a tangible way? And I feel like a lot of his policies and the way that he went about just figuring out how to govern, what influenced his governance, I feel like it's a real proper example that you can follow even in today's times if you want to, as a nation, as a government. So yeah, so it said that abolition in criminology aims to eradicate punitive justice systems and replace them with more community-based solutions, which he did, to crime. And it can sometimes, like I said, feel like it's very abstract to grasp, or at least the solutions that Western people that come from Western places, the way they frame it is very utopian. It doesn't give like tangible examples, in my opinion, or at least I don't see how that would be able to manifest in real life. But I feel like with this, I'm able to understand, like, oh, okay, you treat people like this, you instill this kind of policy, instead of doing this you do that, you know. It's like tangible real life examples. All right. And one thing that also is very important, Eugene was here for 20 years while he was writing this book, 20 plus years, maybe like 20 years or something. And during the time, he noted that there was very little criminal activity, which is very important, an important thing to note, especially when we're talking about abolition. So I'm gonna read the quote that Eugene says in the book. Eugene says, cases of murder have been very rare. That perfect safety has been enjoyed on roads where the traveler might have been robbed 100 times over without the least hope of aid, and in houses where the doors and windows have neither bolts nor bars, each one feels himself inwardly called upon to watch over the maintenance of a certain exterior morality, which we had before the influence of missionaries. Okay? Let's just
turn this on. Turn it on!
Thank you. The liberty these people enjoy, the facility with which they secretly satisfy their natural inclinations. Hello. Their total ignorance of fictitious ones. The charm they find in the conversation, the recitals and the lively sallies which constitute the basis of their social life. All prompt them to a much greater observance of decorum, okay, than we might have expected to find where bias is not attended with infamy. To me, that's just enough evidence to show how successful abolition can be. That's all you need. And you have to understand the kind of road that people like Eugene came from. Like, where they came from, it was hard. Where they came from, they were killing each other. I don't think we understand how, like, are we grasping this? I need you to grasp and understand this really and truly. All right, now moving on. Another thing that also really stood out to me was his economic policies. Like, really and truly, my father of economics. I know that the father of economics is a term that's usually denoted to or attributed to Adam Smith, who like championed capitalism as we know it. He was like, oh yeah, there's some invisible hand. There's some invisible hand, like, oh, some invisible hand that guides capitalism as we know it.
Oh my god, it's not funny.
Mind you, we all know the amount of labor that goes into making capitalism what it is. But yeah, he too is just like, yeah, there's just some invisible hand. It's just invisible. What is actually so, like, even in the book you will see it. I remember there's this one instance where Eugene was traveling, like, this is when he was still traveling to Lesotho from Cape Town, I think. And there's a part where they had to stop, and then they had to slaughter a cow, or was it a sheep or something. And Eugene's just like, oh my gosh, the atrocities. Reader, dearest reader, wherever you are, you should just be so grateful to your butcher, like, because you just don't have to be exposed to such atrocities. What just shows you, like, to them, like, to people that were used to like capitalism, it's just invisible. Like, things just show up and you boom. There's no labor, there's no exploitation, there's nothing like, oh, things just start up. It's just invisible. But yeah. I remember even one time I was in an economics class, and then which was so funny to me, because this one guy asked the lecturer, he was like, and he was actually which is also surprising, but he asked this question. He was like, why is capitalism the default economic system that we follow? And I remember the lecturer said something along the lines of, well, with other economic systems, you just don't know. You don't know if people will share their resources, or if they'll be selfish with them.
What do you mean by that?
And it's like, that's literally what capitalism is. People hoard resources, they don't share them. Like, we have someone on track right now to be a trillionaire. Do you think they got to be a trillionaire by sharing their resources? Let's just open our wake it up. Okay?
Turn this on. Turn it on!
But that was just so funny to me. But anyways, yeah, to me, I really feel like Moshesh was the father of economics and just socialism. Just socialism in general. Like, he had a very holistic approach to things and economic policies and just how to boost productivity, things of that nature. That was not contingent on exploiting people or like extracting resources from them and not sharing it with them. Like, no. It was just a lot more holistic. And one such policy that really, one of my favorites is actually Mafisa. And I'm Lesotho, I'll show you what's on Mafisa thing. If you don't, my brother was sister. I'm just telling you know that song. I'm playing that song. How does it go? Our home moya fisa bundade. Haya toile mata bilesa. Our home moya fisa bundade. Haya toile mata bilesa. Barisa barisa hile tile. Yenza yesi mata bi bundade. Hasigabu hasigabu. Ish. RIP Disua. Oh. Oh, they took Khalek. But anyways, so back to Mafisa here. So Mafisa was a system of loaning cattle to subjects, and in which they could keep the offspring and return the loan, or so they'll be able to do that and sustain themselves and build wealth for themselves as well. Or they could use the cattle loan for milk, for plowing labor, for manure, you know, which was just a way of just redistributing wealth. Like, there is no need to hoard wealth. Once you have enough, like, is there a need to be hoard? Like, what's the point? What is the point? And another one was Matsema, in which after communal cultivation and labor, cultivators were allowed to enjoy the fruits of their labor and not be burdened with paying rent or tithe. And even during the one period of the year where Basotho were to work in the fields of the chief, they will also be compensated with very fat oxen. Okay. And even in certain classes of her subjects, if this practice was also practiced, there was also a certain expectation of reciprocity. So you do for me, I do for you. You do for me, you pay me. You do for me, like, you know, it's all. And something that I found is also so funny. Hey. Eugene in the book was so surprised. Like, even when they were working, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. Like, they'd be singing, like, and this was a way of, like, for them, like, to keep up with, like, time, but also to, like, to invigorate yourself. Like, like, you want to keep time, but you also want to be, you know, you know. And Eugene was just so surprised. He was like, what? Which again, like, Eugene came from that system of capitalism is just so shame. In capitalism, you can't enjoy yourself. You have to be productive. You have to hustle, grind. Yay! No enjoyment, no nothing. So yeah, Eugene was just really surprised. He was like, I can't believe this. I cannot believe my eyes. I cannot believe my eyes.
I cannot believe
But yeah, I really feel like when it comes to talking about socialism, we really should put Moshoeshoe's name up there. Like, he's one of the ones. He was about that life. Like, he implemented socialist policies really and truly. And it's time we gave him that title, Moshesh the Socialist. He's the closest thing that we can dream up. Like I said, I feel like with a lot of these policies and like new ways of being, when we're thinking about like other ways that could work for the world outside of like capitalism and things of that nature, we need tangible examples, because all the West has known for a very long time is just exploitation. Take, grab. So it's like, I feel like a lot of even people that want change, they don't really have like real tangible experiences of what that looks like. It's all very like utopian. Even when you're being introduced to things like socialism, there's this book I remember a lot of people recommend. It's called Socialism, Seriously, and I read that book. The thing about it is that I feel it's very, like I said, it's very utopian. I don't feel like there are real tangible experiences or examples to follow. Like, so what's the solution? It's all very like forward thinking, which is great, but it's like, has it been done before? Do we have examples of that? Like, what does that look like to be able to implement? Do you get? Yeah, so that's something to think about. Another thing that stood out to me was Moshoeshoe as a man of God. Like, he really was a man of God, despite, I feel like, despite the missionary propaganda that, oh yeah, we were all these savages, which is a very, like, that word appears so many times in this book, guys. Yo, Eugene Bear Tanda, savage. I got a savage, but these savages. These savages. But anyways, yeah, I feel like besides the propaganda that, oh yeah, these natives, these indigenous people were savages, they didn't believe in anything, what. Moshoeshoe really was a man of God. And even though he never actually, like, he never converted to Christianity, which I feel like is fair. Like, if you really believe in God, why do they have to be the ones that have a monopoly on what belief and believing in God looks like? Why is that? Like, it's so, why is their version of the truth the only version that is valid? Why? But anyways, yeah, one thing that stood out to me was just his spirituality and his belief, and the way he was able to relate his own faith, and also draw similarities with other faiths as well, including Eugene's. It is proclaimed that the preaching of the missionaries provoked keen discussions in which the chief joined vivaciously. He delighted in tracing resemblances and connections between the new doctrines and their ancient thought. Which I feel like is it really doesn't get more emotionally and spiritually intelligent than to be able to take in what other people are saying without wanting to push your own narrative onto their beliefs. Like, you can just, oh, you believe that? Wow, okay. Well, this is how I believe. This is how I can relate what you relate to, and be able to form a new opinion, a new way of thinking. I'm able to take in the information that you're telling me. That is so emotionally intelligent that I feel like people who don't always have to think in black and white, to me, are one of the most emotionally and intellectually and spiritually intelligent people. Like, what the heck? What the heck? That is just so, like, I don't think you have to be thinking in black and white all the time, unless it's a moral issue. I think the only time that you should be thinking in black and white is when it comes to morality. Say this is wrong, this is right, and have something to stand for. But when it comes to taking in other philosophies, other ways of thinking, other ways of believing, people's opinions, you just learn. Be a curious person, which he was. And the book also said he was also known to quote scripture and reference it to his own belief system. And one that actually particularly it really touched me. It's just honestly one of my favorite, 1 Corinthians 13, but to him it says he recounted the first epistle of Corinthians, which he called the poetry of love. And he said, this is Moshoeshoe saying this, by the way. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not charity, I am become a sounding brass or tinkling cymbal. It's just I don't really think we understand just how great. Okay, and then also Eugene also recounts that Moshoeshoe was particularly drawn to and admiring of Joseph's story and his come up, and we can just see this his belief system also impacting the way that he would lead. Everything came from a place of love, which I feel is the first order of business when it should come to any kind of religion, any kind of belief. Just lead from love. Lead from a place of love. Be guided by love. It's really that simple. It's really that simple. It's not if, ands, or buts. It was also highlighted that Moshoeshoe was directly influenced and impacted by the popular Bantu philosophy of Ubuntu, as people say, which Eugene described as a title or dignity of man, which is, I believe, is not far off from what many religions aim to do. Just lead from a place of consideration of other people. It's really that simple. It shouldn't be hard, should it? And then I found something that he's very popular and known for, which was sleeping with the enemy. Moshesh the Polygamist. So, the king was advised by the great Moshoeshoe to marry in polygamy in an aim to increase his political ties and diplomacy. And so he'd often marry the young maidens of enemy tribes, or the maidens or the daughters of certain chiefs that he wanted to have an alliance with, to be able to achieve this peace that he so greatly desired. So it is believed that he had between 140 or 200 wives.
Damn.
That's a lot. But something that I feel is also not talked about enough is that it was not something that was solely brought upon by Mhlomi and his council. So Moshoeshoe was Pete's grandson. So the grandfather that I was talking about that was captured by the cannibals, that was Pete. So Moshoeshoe was Pete's grandson, who had also previously married a Mutau, who was the aunt of the leader of the Batau, who I believe Mulezan. So he married Mulezan's aunt. That was one of Peter's wives as well. And the Pet. And so Moshoeshoe also followed in these footsteps, as well as his brother as well, Pushudi, who also married from the Batau clan. Even though Batau were not rivals of Moshoeshoe, they were very well acquainted. I remember even there's a picture of them when they went to, I think they came to the Cape Colony. They came to Cape Town. to deliberate with, I think it was the Europeans or something, and he even took one of his counselors, one of his advisors was also from the Battalion clan, so they were very well affiliated. They've always been very like well connected. But for me personally, I think I don't think, how would I say this? For me, I think polygamy was just a political strategy for him. It wasn't something that he wanted to do per se. Like, that's just my belief. Because even in the book, so after Eugene's wife had passed, Moshesh relates to Eugene that you believe that because Moshesh is a polygamist, you cannot understand what we suffer. For me also, there has never been but one woman, and since Mama Hato left me, I walk a solitary man in the midst of the crowd, as a solitary man in the midst of the crowd, which is just, what a hopeless romantic. That is so, that's actually kind of sad, like, to be surrounded by 140 people but you still feel alone. That's so sad. 140 people, imagine the number of kids.
Joe. No, it's a win. Ha!
But you still feel alone because your first wife has passed. That's so sad, actually. Like, yeah. Which this is the thing I love about this book. I feel like it just humanized him so much. And this is another thing I love about reading books like these. I remember I read, what's the other one? Strength to Love by Martin Luther King. I also loved that book. I feel like it gave me a great, so a lot of like the things that he was writing in that book were it was during when he was like imprisoned or when he was preaching, and he was just talking about his struggles, how sometimes he was scared. Even with Malcolm X, in the autobiography of Malcolm X, he was also talking about there were times when I was scared. Like, there were people trying to bomb me, people trying to kill me. I was scared, but I chose courage, you know? And I feel like that's just so admirable, like, to be able to relay your humanity or your humanness, to be able to say, this guys, like, sometimes I'm scared, sometimes I don't know what to do, sometimes I'm in a bind, but I choose to allow courage to be what guides me, you know? Sometimes I'm sad, sometimes I'm lonely, and yeah, I just think that's so admirable. And that's, I really love this. I feel like when I'm talking about non-fiction, I really love things like autobiographies or biographies of like really great people, to be able to get into their mind, like why they think the way they think, how are they able to get through life, you know, things like that. That's so inspiring to me. I feel like it does an even better job than like Buddhist self-help books. Like, it's a much better format for me, I believe, just to be able to get through life and take those lessons, because they really do stay with you for a long time. Like, I think about that book so many I think about it so many times. Yeah. So yeah, that's one thing I really appreciate about this book, is that it was able to like relay his humanities, the side of him that I feel like is not really shown a lot or talked about a lot. Just how tender of a person he was. Like, he was both. Like, he was a warrior, he was strong, but he was also tender, and I feel like he was able to be strong because of how tender he was, if that makes sense. I don't know. But I hope it does. Yeah, and speaking of strength, last but not least, my last point, something that also really stood out to me. Was my fight the king of Ora, and getting his lick back.
Ever cheated on someone?
No, I am not a cheater. That's one thing a bitch don't do. But if a cheat on me, I'm gonna get my lick back.
Because I feel like in life you really have to have duality. Like you have to be tender and soft-hearted and kind-hearted. Also, don't let people walk all over you. Like dualities are really, that's why I don't think life is supposed to be thinking in black and white. Like, no, babes. I think that duality is a very important thing to have, and I feel like he would get his lick back. He's a fighter, he had aura, but he would also get his lick back. Like, you can't just walk all over me, you know what I mean? So yeah, and so even though I really do admire that he was always seeking peace, he was very diplomatic, I also admire and relish in the fact that he also would get his lick back. Like, he would avenge himself. Sometimes you gotta show people that are like, yay. You know? Like, just balance, okay? Balance. Life gotta balance, baby, balance. So it said that Moshoeshoe should often send a gift on. This is so funny to me. This is so funny to me. It said that Moshoeshoe would often send a gift of consolation to the tribes that would attack him after defeating them, and they'd often swear to never return. He did this to the Matebele on the Ndebele, as well as the Zulu one day. During their departure, he sent them fat oxen and had his messengers relay that Moshoeshoe salutes you. Supposing that hunger has brought you into this country, he sends you these cattle that you may eat them on your way back. Which you can just imagine, like, the psychological mechanism. Like, imagine you've just been defeated and someone says, you know what, for the way home, take this on the way home. Since you're so hungry, here's something for the road. Hit the road, Jack. And even later, Eugene in the book, so he was in the Cape Colony. I remember what he was doing at the time. So he came across, I think it was Moselegat's. He stumbled into the deputies of Moselegat's. And he asked if they knew of Moshoeshoe, and they exclaimed, "Know him? Yes!" That is the man who, after having rolled down rocks on our heads, sent us oxen for food. We will never attack him again. And be that as it may, they kept their promise. That's how sometimes you have to show people, like, okay, and Eugene has also described Moshoeshoe as being of a very observant disposition and endowed with great strength of character. Like, he knew how to resist and how to yield at the right moment, procured himself allies even among the invaders of his territory, set his enemies at variances with each other, hey, and by various acts of kindness secured the respect of those even who had sworn his ruin, like the Zulu. Even Eugene himself, Eugene is very, like I say, he's a questionable human being. Like, he was very, Eugene is just, you know how the colonizers do. That was Eugene. But anyways, but he was able to see the greatness of Moshoeshoe, which is, you know, just shows just how much of a great king or black king. The profound knowledge of the human heart, which is the prominent trait in his character, and once again a means of saving his life. And I'm gonna give you an example of one of these instances where like his courage and his heart saved his life. So there was once while at war with the Zulus, the Zulu yielded when Moshoeshoe approached him and said that the king would not and could not be slain, and be that as it may, the Zulus let him pass through. He was like, you know what, to kill a king. Kill a king, you can't do that. And eventually they didn't. Can you imagine? So I personally feel like not only was he good at psychological warfare, but also guerrilla warfare with the aid of his mountainous fortress that was Tawasil, where he had the advantage of great heights, you know, and he was known to attack his enemies by rolling down very huge stones and boulders and just boom, 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 you know, and they would be through like the javelins. It was a very good like strategy for war and battles and things of that nature. And this is just one of the ways that he also defeated the Boers of the Free State, which obviously were meant to topple him from the height of his reign, like quite literally. He just wanted to see him go down from the top of where he was. He just wanted him to tumble down. I said, no. No. So yeah, I just feel like she really exemplifies everything that you could possibly want in a leader. Strong, kind-hearted, of service. And I think it's time to let the people know, you know, scream it from the mountaintops.
Girl, shut the fuck up. You thought you ate that? Bitch,
But yeah, that was my little analysis in celebration of Moshoeshoe's Day, Moshoeshoe's month. I'm hoping to do more of these. I have a lot of things to talk about when it comes to this book and other things as well. And also I want to give a disclaimer. What I say, I interchange Moshoeshoe and Moshesh a lot. Moshesh is a name given by Eugene to Moshoeshoe. So sometimes I say Moshesh, sometimes I say Moshoeshoe. It's not a misspelling or a mispronunciation of his name. I just really like the name Moshesh. Moshesh, yeah. But that was my analysis. I just wanted to see myself represented more, like in terms of like the media. I don't really see myself represented when it comes to culture or our history as well. Even the things that I see like online, it's always given by people that, number one, may not or are not most Basotho people, or like sometimes it's AI, and I'm just like, no man, we can do better than this. Cut off the AI. It's not possible. It's not possible.
So no, onyoko owner everything. Aukonahali shem. You understand?
So yeah, I just want to contribute in this way, in this manner, in the best way that I can, and be able to relay my culture, my thoughts, my interpretations of certain things that I feel like sometimes are not like talked about, you know. But yeah, I'd highly recommend this book. I think you can find it at Lifestyle Books in Maseru. Hi Maseru. I'm sure you can find it online as well. Yeah, it's a great book. There's a lot to learn here, even though it's very hard to get through, especially if you're a young person of a younger younger age, I would prefer, I would advise that you read this maybe like in a book club or things, or someone else, because it's just very dense and the language used here sometimes is very like, what's going on here? But yeah, all in all, it's a great book. The author, on the other hand, I'm gonna do a review about him as well, to talk about my thoughts on Eugene and his impact. But what's in what more would you like to see? You know, what to see what I did there, like.
Girl, shut the fuck up. You thought you ate that? Bitch, you...
Yeah. So this is it. See you next time.